It all begins with a young man desperately running down a rainy street while someone shouts for him to stop. Just then, two brutes appear and ask a huddled old man where the boy ran off to. However, the white-haired man just stays silent under his hood, not answering at all. The stronger of the two gets annoyed by the lack of response and grabs the elderly man by the collar, yelling at him. Then the big guy gets furious and prepares to throw a punch, accusing the old man of playing dumb. But before he could do anything, the young man from before returns, shouting for them to stop immediately. He then says he's the one they're looking for, and that there's no need to bother anyone else. The loan sharks are surprised to see that the debtor had the courage to come back and face them. Without a second thought, the guy in the red bandana lands a heavy punch on the young man's face. Now on the ground, the boy coughs as the collectors demand he pay what he owes to the golden hair group. The young man begs for more time, asking them to wait until next month to settle the debt. The loan shark lifts him by his shirt and threatens to wreck his house if he doesn't pay up soon, and the young man asks for a few more days. The thug isn't interested in negotiating, so he throws the protagonist to the ground with force. With that, the collectors decide to leave, abandoning the debtor in a puddle of water. Down and all beaten up, he thinks that he can't let them go because Mai is still at home. In an act of desperation, he gets up and attacks the brute from behind with an object he found on the ground. However, he's easily taken down again and falls to the ground while the loan shark complains about his persistence. Suddenly, a luxury car screeches to a halt on the wet street, drawing everyone's attention. Next, a man gets out of the vehicle while someone holds an umbrella for him so he doesn't get wet. To the protagonist's surprise, the one who steps out is the boss of the golden hair group, and he's with a woman named May. The young man is completely shocked and asks the woman what she's doing there with that man. She coldly replies not to call her that and reveals that her new boyfriend is the young master's son. Desperate, he yells that it can't be true, as they've spent the last 10 years together. At that moment, the girl's mother appears and calls him shameless, saying he held her daughter's life back. On his knees, the young man questions her and remembers he took money from loan sharks for her heart surgery. But the ungrateful mother-in-law says that no one told him to get the money and that her new son-in-law gives much more expensive gifts. The ex-girlfriend adds that the choice was his, as he always promised to do anything for her. Protagonist argues that he supported her through college and even mortgaged his house for her to open a design studio. Angrily, the woman slaps him, calling him a loser and saying her daughter now belongs to someone wealthy. Then, a bolt of lightning cuts through the dark sky, as if representing the end of everything for the poor guy. Master Son approaches and tells Lin Yuan to know his place and pay the debt before disappearing. The young man just remains silent, completely devastated by the double betrayal he just suffered. He then trembles with rage upon realizing that his 10 years of love and the favor he did were worth nothing. The gang leader tells the woman and her mother to get in the car, and they both readily agree. As they drive away, the ex-mother-in-law even comments that just looking at the debtor's face brings bad luck. The henchmen then grab Lin Yuan and ask their boss what to do with him, and the leader tells them to follow the rules. The brute with the bandana gives a malicious smile to the master and confirms he got the message. And then, a scream of pain echoes through the dark, rainy alley, showing that something terrible happened. The loan shark with glasses warns him that the injured leg is the interest, and if he doesn't pay by next month, it will be even worse. With that, they leave, leaving the young man passed out in the rain as the hooded figure approaches. Lying on the ground, the young man tells the old man to leave so he doesn't get involved in his problems. But the elderly man just smiles and tells the boy not to lose heart, as there's still time for everything. The protagonist then vents that his girlfriend left him, and now he's drowning in debt. At that moment, he feels a notification on his phone and is intrigued by what it could be. He then takes the phone out of his pocket to check the message he just received. To his surprise, The screen shows a deposit of 1 million yuan into his bank account. The young man is in shock with the phone in his hand, wondering if he's seeing things. The debtor then thinks it's too much of a coincidence because he actually wished for 10 million. And as if by magic, a new notification appears with another 10 million yuan. Celebrating, the young man gets up, shouting that the day of his comeback has finally arrived. However, his celebration is cut short by the pain in his leg, and the old man offers to help. At the hospital, an arrogant guy looks at them with disgust and complains about the smell coming from them. The receptionist informs them that the medical fee is 50,000 and a standard room costs 10,000 per day. Upon hearing the price of 10,000 per day, the young man is shocked and says he won't be admitted. At this, the receptionist gets furious and accuses him of pretending to be rich without having a dime. But he just cracks a confident smile because now the situation is very different. With a grin, he places a card on the counter and says he wants the best room in the hospital. The woman is still suspicious and takes the card, thinking he's just fooling around. But when she swipes the card, her eyes widen in surprise at the result of the transaction. Her expression changes instantly, and she calls him Mr. Lin, promising to take care of everything. Now in the VIP room, the young man receives first-class treatment with massages and special care. In addition, he enjoys gourmet meals specially prepared for his recovery. With all this care, his injured leg gradually recovers without any complications. The nurse then informs him that he is fully recovered and can be discharged from the hospital. Completely renewed, he leaves the hospital with a confident posture alongside the old gentleman. At that moment, he remembers the betrayal and swears he will get back everything he lost to his ex. Outside, he thanks the elderly man and tries to give him a card as a form of payment. But the protagonist insists, saying his luck changed thanks to him and that he considers him his benefactor. Suddenly, a streamer passing by sees the scene and decides to get closer to record the situation. Just then, the elderly man falls to the ground, and the streamer's chat tells him to help. However, the content creator hesitates, thinking it might be a scam to get money from him. Without a second thought, the young man shoves the streamer aside and runs to help the fallen elderly man. He puts him on his back and carries him into the hospital, while the chat praises his actions. The old man then thinks to himself that he knew he hadn't misjudged the young man's character. Quickly, the protagonist takes his benefactor to the emergency room to be treated. The doctor informs him that the patient had a cerebral hemorrhage and needs urgent surgery. Determined, the young man says the old man's life is important and that he will pay for all the expenses. With that, the doctor confirms he will handle everything and takes the patient to the operating room. The doctor watches the young man walk away and thinks that money makes people more courageous. While waiting, the protagonist stands outside the hospital with a confident look. The young man reflects that the feeling of having no money problems is simply incredible. He now walks confidently through the city, knowing he is no longer an indebted loser. Suddenly, he hears someone shouting from a building for him to pay his overdue rent. Next, a picture frame is thrown from the window and shatters on the ground right in front of him. The broken object reveals a photo of him as a child with his parents, smiling happily. Carefully, the young man picks up the picture frame from the ground to save his family's photo. He looks at the picture with a serious and determined expression on his face. An acquaintance approaches and warns him that the landlady is furious and looking for him. The friend finds the protagonist's calmness strange and wonders since when he became so composed. Upon arriving home, the owner of the property greets him with a broom in her hand, yelling at him. The woman threatens him, saying he's not leaving until he pays the 3 months of rent. She then complains about her bad luck for having a deadbeat and broke tenant like him. The young man looks at the photo and thinks that he made his parents suffer during the first half of their lives. The shouting catches the attention of the neighbors, who come out to see what's happening. One neighbor comments that she heard he doesn't pay his rent and his girlfriend left him. Another resident agrees, calling him pathetic and saying he deserved to be dumped. The landlady gets even more irritated with his silence and asks if he's pretending to be deaf. She continues her lecture, saying she's never seen someone so shameless in all her years of renting. The woman yells that he needs to pay today, or she won't have money for her mahjong game. Calmly, he holds her finger and asks if that's all she wants with a cold look. The landlady is confused by his question and stares at him, not understanding anything. He then transfers 6,000 yuan to her, and she is shocked to see the money in her account. The woman can't believe that this poor guy now has money to pay the rent. She gets even more annoyed by the former debtor's indifferent and calm attitude. The young man then shows his phone, and the notification reveals a balance of almost 11 million. In shock, the landlady realizes that the entire building isn't even worth the change in his account. With a superior look, he asks if she's seen enough, and the woman is left speechless. He smiles and says he has an idea, since she loves collecting rent so much. Then, the newly rich man announces he's going to buy the whole building, so she can collect rent for him. The gossiping neighbors start mocking him, calling him a country bumpkin and a useless piece of trash. Scared, the landlady stammers that the building's market price is 4.5 million. He offers 10 million with a card and tells her to use the rest to renovate everything. The woman takes the card with a smile and assures him she will take care of everything perfectly. The young man then turns to the neighbors and gives everyone 3 days to pack their bags. Outraged, they shout that their lease isn't over and that the rent is paid. The new employee yells that the building now belongs to Lin and his word is law. The protagonist reinforces that in 3 days, he doesn't want to see anyone else there, and she backs him up. The scene then shifts to the night in front of a luxurious and imposing hotel in the city. The now wealthy young man walks confidently down the red carpet toward the entrance. At the reception, an employee greets him and asks if he has a reservation. The young man is confused by the question and denies having made any kind of reservation to stay. At that moment, a voice calls him a loser and questions his nerve for walking into a 5-star hotel. He then realizes his ex-girlfriend and master son are there in the same place as him. The woman tells him to wake up to reality and stop clinging to her, because it's over. With disdain, he calls her delusional for thinking he still cares about her. The girl accuses him of following her to beg on his knees, and her boyfriend encourages him to do so. Angrily, the protagonist clenches his fist and tells his ex that she has crossed the line. Just then, the loan sharks appear and surround him, asking if he finally got the money. The ex-girlfriend warns that Master Sun is an important guest and he'd better not cause any trouble, but he cuts her off, saying he's only there to check in, not to listen to her rambling. Furious, the woman raises her hand to slap him across the face for his insolence. However, he easily grabs her wrist and says he doesn't have time to deal with the two of them. The loan shark with the bandana gets angry and threatens the young man for talking to them that way. However, before he could do anything, a firm voice shouts for him to stop immediately. The collectors are shocked to see who has arrived and recognize someone named Mr. Li. The man who appears is Lin Yuan, the biggest partner of the Jinfa group, an important figure. Master Sun apologizes to the newcomer for the shameful scene and invites him in. He then says the protagonist is a deadbeat and that he's going to throw him out right now. With that, one of the henchmen grabs the young man to kick him out of the hotel, but he resists. Suddenly, a cane hits the floor hard, stopping the commotion at once. Mr. Lai becomes furious and threatens to bankrupt the Jinfa group if they touch the young man. The people around are shocked by the situation and wonder about the relationship between the two. Master Sun is completely confused as the important man walks right past him. He then approaches the protagonist and says he finally found him, but the young man doesn't recognize him. The newcomer then introduces himself as Lin Yuan and reveals that the young man is his family's benefactor. The rich man explains that his father collapsed on the street and was saved by him, who paid for all the expenses. At this point, Master Sun interrupts and suggests there must be some mistake. He shows a photo and a proof of debt to prove that the debtor couldn't possibly pay. With a look of contempt, the Lee family heir takes out his phone and says he also has something to show. The screen displays the hospital security camera footage, showing the young man helping the elderly man. The couple is in shock, and the woman wonders how that's possible if he was broke. As a thank you, the man offers a diamond card and says the Lee family will cover everything. At this, all the security guards kneel as a sign of gratitude for him saving the old master. The gang leader and the ex-girlfriend are even more shocked to see the VIP diamond card. Someone in the crowd comments that there are only 3 people in the world have that card. The protagonist refuses the gift, saying that saving people is the basic thing to do and that he will handle his own debts. He then gives a confident smile, showing he is determined to solve everything himself. But the old man's son insists, offering the card as a gift between friends. The security guards then kneel again and ask in unison for Mr. Lin to accept it. Awkwardly, the young man accepts the gift to avoid more trouble, and the man is pleased. The ex-girlfriend then whispers to her boyfriend that the loser really got lucky. The lie-hair ignores them both and orders Sun Wenwu to transfer his presidential suit to Mr. Lin. Master Sun is completely shocked by the order and can't believe he'll have to serve the former debtor. He then protests, saying the young man is a deadbeat, and the woman adds that a loser doesn't deserve the suit. Annoyed, the rich man accuses them of looking down on the Lee family and threatens to cancel an important project. At this, the young master turns pale, remembering that 70% of his family's income comes from the lists. Desperate, he changes his attitude and invites the protagonist to go ahead, as he can't lose the project. The heir turns to leave with his new friend, but Sun Wenwu runs towards them. He then bows in apology, admitting he failed to recognize someone important. The woman is confused and asks why her boyfriend is apologizing to that loser. The young man's face contorts with pure rage, seeing that his girlfriend doesn't understand the gravity of the situation. In a fit of fury, he slaps her across the face and yells at her for insulting Mr. Lee's benefactor. On the floor, the young woman is in shock and can't believe she was hit because of her ex-boyfriend. Master Sun then orders her to kneel immediately and apologize to Mr. Lin. He turns to the two of them and begs for forgiveness, saying the woman has no brain and not to take her seriously. The protagonist cuts him off and warns that it's enough for now, as their scores won't be settled in a single day. The other young man agrees and says goodbye politely, inviting them both for breakfast. With that, the former debtor and his new friend enter the elevator, and the doors close in front of the couple. Alone in the hallway, Sun Wenwu swears with hatred in his eyes that he will remember the humiliation he endured. The next day, the protagonist receives a transfer of 130 million and goes to buy a new car. In the presidential suite, the heir asks if his new friend is satisfied with everything, and he confirms. With a smirk, the rich man gives a mysterious order and says to serve the protagonist well. The young man is completely confused by the situation and is led away by two men without understanding what's happening. He then relaxes on a comfortable sofa while two women massage him to relieve the day's tension. His friend explains that this is his personal gratitude and that he will bring his father to formally thank his parents. The young man then reflects on the situation and thinks this must be how high society works. He then remembers his parents and promises that he will now give them a good life because things have changed. The scene then cuts to the next day with a beautiful view of the sunny city and its tall buildings. An employee then appears to help the young man choose a new suit to start the day well-dressed. Already in his new, elegant clothes, he dismisses the woman and prepares for the plans he has in mind. With a smile, he decides he will first buy a car and then pick up his parents with the new vehicle. All dressed up and confident, the former debtor leaves the luxury hotel to put his plan into action. Hiding, a man in sunglasses watches him and reports on his phone that the target has just left the location. The man then gets into a car and tells the driver to follow the protagonist so they don't lose sight of him. Meanwhile, our hero arrives at a luxury car dealership to make his first big purchase. A salesman approaches with a smile and greets him, asking if he wants to take a look at the cars. The young man replies that's what he wanted, but another arrogant employee arrives and interrupts the conversation. The blue-haired guy calls him broke, and the protagonist asserts that he is there to buy a car. The salesman looks down on him, saying his cheap clothes already show he's a loser pretending to be a customer. Losing patience, the young man removes his hand from his shoulder, and the salesman gets furious at the young man's attitude. Suddenly, his ex-girlfriend appears with Master Sun, who calls him a broke loser and glares at him. The woman takes off her sunglasses and questions him with disdain, asking if he thinks he can even look at a Maybach. Master Sun warns him not to think his life has changed just because he was lucky enough to meet Mr. Lee. He even brags that the girl the protagonist loved for 10 years is now his fiancée. The golden hair group's henchmen then start laughing and making jokes about his uselessness. The ex-girlfriend thinks with contempt that she never had eyes for him because she knew he was worthless. Calmly, the young man agrees and says that if they were together, she really wouldn't be riding in a Maybach. He then points confidently and reveals that the car he's going to buy is actually that one over there. Everyone looks and sees a limited edition Bugatti that costs 130 million yuan. The arrogant salesman starts laughing and gives the protagonist 5 seconds to get out of there immediately, but he ignores the idiot and hands his card to the first salesman, telling him to handle the sale. The employee then takes the card with trembling hands and swipes it in the machine to close the deal. To everyone's shock, the screen shows that the transfer of 130 million was successful. The blue-haired salesman turns pale, wondering how that loser got so much money. At that moment, the clicks of the store manager's heels echo through the showroom as she approaches angrily. She then slaps the arrogant salesman and calls him a fool for insulting the owner of the Bugatti. The other employee is surprised by his boss's action, and the protagonist just watches the scene. The manager turns to the customer and promotes the good salesman, giving him the full commission from the sale. The newly promoted young man thanks her very emotionally and bows to the manager and his new client. The protagonist says he deserved it, unlike others who only know how to look down on people. The arrogant salesman is in total shock when the manager yells that he is officially fired. Desperate, the guy begs for another chance and says he made a huge mistake by judging the customer by his appearance. He then kneels in front of the rich young man and asks for the young master to have mercy on his job. But the security guards drag him out while the ex-salesman screams about his debts and mortgages to pay. With everything settled, the manager smiles and offers 30 days of exclusive service with a model and a luxury driver. She then introduces the beautiful Kun Mu, who is a world champion and will be the hero's new companion on this journey. Master Sun tries to approach, but the security guard stops him, warning that only Bugatti owners can speak with her. Furious, the frustrated rich kid thinks that the protagonist only got all this because of the Lee family's influence. The next day, the new millionaire arrives in his old village, driving the supercar alongside the elegant driver. He waves to 2 old ladies resting in the shade, and the women are astonished to see who has returned home. They then ask why his ex-girlfriend didn't come and who this beautiful young woman accompanying him now is. With an elegant smile, the model introduces herself to the aunties, revealing she is just the rich young man's private driver. The young man calmly says goodbye and informs them he's going to visit his parents, while the neighbors are left speechless. As soon as he walks away, the gossips start talking badly, saying he must be pretending to be rich just to show off. Arriving in front of his house, the protagonist remembers how simple but very honest life was in that old place. Suddenly, a loud shout from inside the residence breaks the silence, and someone threatens to strike a defenseless old man. The hero feels his blood boil upon hearing a bully's voice, intimidating his family inside their own home. Upon entering, he sees a brute grabbing his father by the collar while his mother cries desperately on the living room floor. The man tries to defend himself, saying he only bumped into a tree seedling and the amount they're charging is a ripoff. But the thug yells that the plant was a very expensive imported pine tree and demands 100,000 yuan for the damage immediately. His accomplice suggests taking everything of value from the house, while the bald villain smiles with evil in his eyes. At that moment, the protagonist orders them to stop, and the bully gets angry, asking who dares to interrupt him. With a sneer, the guy recognizes the young man and starts mocking him, saying the great indebted loser decided to come back. The other thug bursts out laughing and comments that he probably couldn't even beg for food in the big city anymore. Enraged, the young master tells the criminal not to cross the line and questions why they are mistreating his parents. The big guy then lies, saying the old man destroyed over 100 tree seedlings and demands 100,000 yuan as payment. The hero's father tries to explain that the cameras prove his innocence, but the scammer claims the devices are broken. Then, the bald man mocks the family's financial situation, claiming that poor people like them would never have that much money. With ulterior motives, the villain shows a house transfer contract and tells the man to sign it to settle the supposed debt. Desperate, the parents cry as they realize the wrongdoer wants to leave them without a roof over their heads with this absurd blackmail. In that instant, the young man glares at the enemy with hatred and states he has been oppressing the villagers for too long. The bully just laughs at the threat and wonders if the former debtor really thinks he became someone important out there. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps echoes through the place, indicating that the gang brought backup for the trouble. Surrounded by several henchmen armed with bats, the hero is told there will be no more talk, and that today he will suffer the consequences. With a dark expression, the protagonist warns that the day of reckoning has finally come for everyone present. Without hesitation, he lunges forward and lands a powerful punch on the leader's face to unleash all his pent-up anger. The bald man spits out a tooth and goes crazy with rage, ordering his men to finish off the young man without any mercy. Suddenly, the beautiful driver enters the fray and prepares to fight against the brutes who are charging forward. With swift movements, the woman lands a precise kick to the chin of one of the attackers, leaving him completely dazed. At that moment, she demonstrates incredible combat skills and begins to take down all the thugs with acrobatic moves. Outside, the neighbors hear the fight and comment that the Lin family is in real trouble this time. Then, the front door is busted open with a loud bang, startling everyone nearby. To everyone's surprise, the thugs are thrown out of the house one by one, leaving the neighbors in shock. With a bruised face, the gang leader threatens the young man, saying their revenge isn't over yet. With that, the bullies flee with their tails between their legs while the protagonist watches with contempt. The residents change their opinion instantly and start praising the young man, saying he was always promising. Inside the house, the young man hugs his parents and apologizes for all the suffering they've been through. His father says it's okay, but now they can no longer live in that village because of the fight. With a smile, he calms them both down and reveals that he came back precisely to take them to the city with him. Suddenly, he feels a strong dizzy spell, and a strange aura begins to take over his body. His parents get worried seeing their son's condition and ask what's happening to him. The young man faints in the driver's arms, and his parents despair, thinking he was injured in the fight. Outside, the gossiping neighbors comment that he was just putting on a brave face, and that the family will have hard days ahead. Now recovered, he says he's fine, and it was just fatigue from not sleeping well lately. The young man then reinforces that they will go to the city to live in a big house, and will never be mistreated again. He informs them that the car is at the village entrance, and that they can leave whenever they wish. As they walk away, the neighbors start gossiping again, wondering why he would take his parents to the city. But they are all left speechless when they see the luxury car and speculate on how he could afford something so expensive. Hours later, they arrive at a fancy building, and the son says that now they need new, proper clothes. His parents are intimidated by the luxury of the place, and say they don't want to go into a void causing trouble. With a smile, he tells his parents not to worry, as their son has no shortage of that kind of money. But his mother gets a fright when she sees a price tag with the value of 999,000 yuan. Desperate, she tries to pull her son out, saying that it's a robbery and they can't afford it. In the process, the lady accidentally bumps into a woman who calls her a blind fool for not watching where she's going. The young man's mother quickly apologizes for the bump and says it was entirely her fault. To her surprise, the woman recognizes her and complains about the bad luck of running into poor, deadbeat relatives. Mrs. Lin is confused by the treatment and asks what the other woman means by that insult. The ex-mother-in-law tells her to know her place and stay away so she doesn't get her designer clothes dirty with the smell of poverty. The young man's father then steps in and offers to apologize on his son's behalf for any misunderstanding. The wealthy woman just scoffs at the idea of a marriage between the families with a disdainful smile. At that moment, the ex-girlfriend appears, and her mother brags about her new son-in-law, who is the famous young master son. Shocked, the protagonist's parents question him to find out if everything those two are saying is true. He then calmly confirms to his parents that he and the girl have indeed broken up. The young woman advises him to find someone on his own level, and her mother adds that no girl wants a poor guy. The lady even rubs it in their faces that she can buy everything there, while they can only watch from afar. Unexpectedly, the driver agrees and says that a gold-digging piece of trash like the ex is not worthy of her boss. She also defends him, saying she would be with him even without money, unlike those who show off with others' wealth. The woman says she couldn't stand hearing any more nonsense and asks if Mr. Lin wants to keep listening to that. With that, the young man takes out his card and tells the saleswoman to pack up everything in the store for his parents and his companion. The employee is in shock and stammers that the bill would be at least 8 million yuan and asks if he's serious. The ex-girlfriend doubts it and says he's lucky if he has 800 yuan in his account and that he's just pretending to be rich. But to her astonishment, the machine confirms the payment of 8 million yuan without any problem. The ex-mother-in-law accuses the young man of using a credit advance, but the saleswoman defends him, saying it's a black card. The woman then says he must be using Mr. Lee's card, and the protagonist decides to open her eyes for good. With a smile, he announces for everyone to hear that he's going to buy the entire store to end the argument. The employee turns pale and informs him that the store costs 100 million, and the lady yells that it's impossible for him to have that much money. He then says he's sorry to disappoint her, and swipes the card to pay the 100 million as if it were nothing. The saleswoman calls him Boss Lin, and he announces that the store is closed and forbids the entry of those two. At this, the ex-girlfriend shouts that he's faking it, and that the money is surely borrowed from Mr. Lee. A security guard then kicks them out of the store and warns them to stop making a scene, or things will get ugly. With hatred in her eyes, the girl swears she will wait for the day Mr. Lee gets tired of funding the loser. In the car, the young man's father comments that all of this feels like a dream, and that he never imagined living like this. The son assures him that their good life will continue, and the driver asks what their next destination is. He then decides to go to the biggest auction in the city, because his father likes to collect antiques, and now he can afford them. The scene then shifts to the night, in front of the imposing building where the Zhongqing charity auction is taking place. Inside the hall, a man thanks the Tiania group for their support and asks the guests to enter with their invitations. At the entrance, an employee stops the family and asks them to show their invitation to enter the event. The man calls them country bumpkins and asks where they bought their fake clothes, telling them to leave. The protagonist gets furious at the insult and glares at the arrogant employee, asking what he just said. The man threatens to throw them out, but before he can do anything, a firm voice shouts for him to stop. The son of the saved old man appears and asks why the security guard dares to touch his VIP guest. At this, people recognize Li Tianyang and the employee is shocked to see such an important figure. Desperate, the security guard tries to explain himself, but fear prevents him from forming any coherent sentence. The rich man then orders his men to take the guy away, so as not to spoil Mr. Lin's mood. Next, the lie-hair bows and apologizes to the protagonist and his family for the shameful scene. The people around are shocked, wondering who this boy is to receive a personal apology. The young man's father is completely confused and asks his son what is happening at that moment. The other young man then explains that the hero saved his father's life, and that's why he is his family's benefactor. With everything resolved, he invites everyone to enter the hall as the auction is about to begin. He also says that as the organizer, he hopes everyone has fun and mentions a final item for Mr. Lin. The auction begins with high bids, and a vase is quickly sold for over 5 million yuan. Later, the auctioneer announces the night's great treasure, a special item called the treasure, bringing Roi. The piece is made of 10,000-year-old warm jade with night pearls and red gold encrusted in it. The object also has a purple sandalwood base with 7 jewels and gold threads, a true treasure. Besides being beautiful, the item attracts wealth and protects the home from financial misfortunes, according to the description. With that, the auctioneer announces the starting bid of 10 million yuan, and the bidding begins in earnest. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes in the protagonist's head and orders him to get that treasure. The young man is startled and looks to his side, but his companion heard nothing and asks what's wrong. The voice then whispers in his ear and insists that he win the auction and secure the rai for her. Meanwhile, the bidding becomes fierce, and the offers climb to 18, 25, and 28 million. Suddenly, a rich man offers 50 million and says he'll do anything for his wife. With this, people praise him, and the auctioneer announces the bid from the Jinfa group for everyone. The woman beside him smiles with satisfaction, and the man on stage begins the countdown to close the deal. But before he could bring down the gavel, the protagonist interrupts the sale with a firm and calm voice. He then offers 100 million at once and says that, coincidentally, his girlfriend also liked the item. Everyone in the hall is completely shocked by the absurd bid and wonders who this young man is. The auctioneer warns that, according to the rules, bids over 100 million require an on-the-spot asset verification. Unfazed, the young man agrees to the rule and authorizes the verification of his assets for all to see. The bid screen then displays a balance of over 900 billion, and everyone realizes he's a hidden tycoon. Next, the auctioneer asks the other competitor to also show his assets to continue in the bidding. To the rich man's shame, the screen shows that he only has 90 million in his bank account. The man on stage then informs that young Master Sun's limit is not sufficient and removes him from the auction. Outraged, he stands up and protests, saying that is only part of his assets, but he is reprimanded. The man is left speechless and can only break into a cold sweat from the shame and anger he's feeling. His companion tries to calm him down, saying the loser only got that because of Mr. Li and that it won't last. With that, the gavel falls, and the auctioneer announces that the treasure, bringing Roi, now belongs to Mr. Lin Yuan. The Li hair congratulates him and invites him to a VIP room to rest for a bit, and the young man accepts. Once there, the CEO of another group introduces himself and hands his card to the new tycoon in town. Upon holding the Roi, the protagonist feels a strange presence, and a mysterious shadow appears in front of him. Suddenly, the artifact begins to glow intensely with a powerful light in his hands. Suddenly, the young man feels a terrible headache and groans in pain as everyone gets startled, and someone yells to call an ambulance urgently. Just then, the young man realizes he's floating in a dark space and wonders where he could be and if he might have passed out. With his vision blurred, he puts a hand to his face to shield himself from a bright golden light that begins to fill the area. Before him, the energy transforms into a huge, shining golden tunnel, leaving the young man completely shocked by the scene. Soon, a giant entity dressed in red reveals itself, declaring it is the ninth god of wealth of the 3 realms. Completely astonished, the protagonist breaks out in a cold sweat as he repeats the deity's title, unable to believe what he was hearing. At that moment, a light fills the young man's chest as the entity warns that a great financial tribulation is approaching. As the entity begins to disappear into the light, the boy gets desperate, asking it to wait and explain things properly. Then, the young man's eyes snap open, revealing a bright, golden pupil filled with mystical power. With that, he realizes he's lying in a hospital bed and wonders if the whole thing was just a crazy dream. But the new millionaire's reflections are cut short as the sliding door to his room slowly begins to open. Soon, the heir of the wealthy family enters the room with a smile, celebrating the fact that his benefactor has finally woken up. The man in the suit asks if he's in any pain and offers to call the doctors, but the patient assures him it was just a lack of sleep. Just then, the wealthy man's expression shifts to a more serious tone as he tries to find out if his friend is facing any difficulties. Determined, the protagonist raises a finger and confesses that he plans to start a company to go head against his enemy's group. The visitor laughs and shows his full support for this revenge, but the patient, sweating nervously, tries to explain it's not just personal anger. The boy then argues that those predatory lenders ruin the futures of many young people, and that he wants to give those people a new chance. Impressed by the young man's nobility, the heir places a hand on his chest and swears he will do everything to support this grand project. With that, the young man asks for a favor to help with the legal registration of the new corporation, and the man in the suit promptly asks what the name will be. With a confident smile and a faint golden glint in his eyes, the former debtor declares that his corporation will be called the Chishin Group. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to dawn in the city, showing the luxurious, sunlit main office of the enemy group. On the couch, a man with a mustache laughs as he reads the news, finding it ridiculous that the young man wants to start a company to help the poor. He hugs the girl and scoffs, saying the project is a cheap copy and that the boy just lives in a fantasy world. Suddenly, his eyes widen behind his glasses as he sees an important update that leaves him completely stunned. The phone screen shows that the Chishin Group has been officially founded, and the protagonist has already become the new president of the Federation. The scene changes to a large auditorium, where a press conference is taking place with many important people present. A reporter with glasses questions if the president isn't afraid of losing money, since these social projects are high risk. The young man responds firmly that his biggest fear is seeing people give up on their dreams for lack of money, not financial loss. With a confident smile, he states that as long as the project helps people, he can endure any short-term risk. Then, a female reporter stands up and asks if he has considered the problem of the barren southern mountain, which is considered a hot potato. The audience begins to whisper, saying that place is a money pit, and whoever gets involved there ends up going bankrupt and failing miserably. But the protagonist remains unfazed, declaring that it's not a problem, but an urgent social issue that needs to be resolved. In front of all the cameras, the new millionaire announces that his group will invest heavily in the development of that barren mountain. This causes an uproar, and all the journalists rush to ask questions about the capital and the timeline for the project to begin. Meanwhile, night falls on the city, and we return to the rival group's luxurious office, where the atmosphere is one of pure mockery and envy. The villain laughs loudly with his lover on his lap, saying that investing in that mountain is proof that the boy has no grip on reality. The woman smiles in agreement as the man says that loser loves to live in fantasies and is going to fall flat on his face very soon. His gaze turns dark, and he mutters that he wants to see how many days his rival's little game will last before it all comes crashing down. Back at the hero's group, we see a serious meeting in the conference room, where the mood among the new partners is quite tense. The wealthy friend is worried, warning that the mountain is a nightmare where 5 waves of investors have already gone bankrupt in the past. On the table, the project document shows the frightening numbers, with losses in the hundreds of millions, making the scale of the risk clear. The young man orders his assistant to contact the experts immediately and demands a full report on the area in just 3 days. Just then, his wealthy friend appears with a folder and hands over the contact for the best construction team in the city to help with the endeavor. The very next day, an impressive fleet of yellow excavators gathers at the mountain's entrance to begin the heavy construction. With that, the workers start drilling into the rocky ground with jackhammers and analyze the blueprints to transform that arid place. The scale of the project quickly becomes gigantic, with conveyor belts and trucks moving tons of earth without stopping for a single second. A week passes, and the protagonist's phone buzzes, notifying him of a bank transfer of nearly 9 million that just came in. Suddenly, the office door flies open, and the beautiful secretary rushes in, flustered and out of breath, calling for her boss. Sitting calmly at his desk, the young man finds her panic strange and asks what happened that was so urgent. The employee then quickly extends her arm and hands him her cell phone so he can see the bombshell news with his own eyes. On the screen, a sensational headline calls the investor a fool and says the mountain project is a total failure with no return. In addition, the television shows a reporter live on the scene, questioning if the city's new mogul will be able to turn this risky game around. Worried, the assistant warns that public opinion has exploded against them and that the outside world is laughing at the company with pessimism. The young man walks to the window, observing the city, and realizes that his rivals launched this media offensive just to see him fall. But a confident smile appears on his face, as he knows very well that those enemies picked the wrong opponent this time. Meanwhile, in the enemy group's banquet hall, a lavish party is underway filled with beautiful women to celebrate the supposed failure. The villain dances closely with his lover and remarks mockingly that it would be a real fairy tale if that place ever turned a profit. With a malicious and venomous look, the mustached man suggests that the party is actually an early funeral for his rival's project. Excited, he raises his arm and announces to all the guests in the hall that he will be paying for all the expenses of that night of partying. However, the celebration is abruptly interrupted when the cell phone in his pocket starts ringing insistently, demanding his attention. When he answers, a voice on the other end of the line asks where he's been, as there are important people waiting for him at that moment. Just then, the villain is shocked to hear the bombshell news on the phone and questions in disbelief what he was just told. Consumed by fury, he violently throws his cell phone on the ground, shattering the device in front of all the guests. Seeing this, his lover tries to calm the playboy down, asking the reason for so much anger, but he seems to be beside himself, with veins popping on his face. The mustache man loses his temper and rudely yells for her to get out of his sight right now. He grinds his teeth in hatred, thinking of his rival, and refuses to accept that the one he called a loser has won again. Then the scene flashes back 1 hour to explain everything, showing the construction site under a heavy downpour. The protagonist arrives wearing a black cloak, and the foreman runs over to report the urgent situation they've encountered. The worker explains that the excavator hit something very hard while removing earth from that barren mountain. Upon closer inspection, they noticed that the rock was full of golden minerals, shining in the darkness. Emotionally, the worker reveals that they have just discovered a massive gold mine hidden in that place. The wealthy friend can't help but laugh and congratulates the young man, saying he's a good luck charm who proved everyone wrong. With a sly smile, the young man jokes that his determination must have moved the heavens to receive such a gift, but he soon turns serious and orders security to be tightened with full surveillance to protect their new asset. The partner then furrows his brow, confused to hear that the hero plans to hand over the mine's exploration to the government. The young man explains that gold is a national resource and asks his friend to use his connections to schedule an official meeting. Impressed by such honesty, the hare smiles in relief and assures him that he will take care of all the necessary paperwork. A short time later, the story takes us to the municipal government building, where the fate of the mine will be decided. In the meeting room, several officials in suits analyze the feasibility report while the new mogul waits. A serious director looks at the young man and comments on the losses his company had been incurring before this big break. Humbly, the protagonist replies that losing money is nothing if it's to help the development of his city. Faced with the young man's humility, the officials whisper among themselves, praising the new investor's integrity and noble stance. Then, the director speaks up, asking the young man to be frank and present his concept for the gold mine project. The protagonist stands up and explains that his idea is not just to extract ore, but to create comprehensive development. He firmly proposes building a matrix that connects all local industries around that new source of wealth. The official is surprised by the ambition of the idea and questions if the young man truly has a concrete plan for it. Without hesitation, the young millionaire flashes a confident smile and confirms that he already has everything planned down to the smallest detail. Pointing to the map on the screen, he describes a route focused on the economy, creating jewelry services and mining tourism. In addition, he plans a cultural route with the construction of a large museum to attract tourists and tell the local history. The project also includes ecological trails and cultural zones to promote the customs and architecture of that region. To conclude, the young man offers to lead the development and cover all initial costs out of his own pocket. He even guarantees that after generating revenue, he will reinvest all profits into public welfare projects. Hearing this, everyone in the room stands up and applauds, amazed by the enlightened vision that this young entrepreneur possesses. The director shakes the hero's hand, sealing the deal, and promises that the government will give its full support to make the plan work. Suddenly, the door to the meeting room opens, drawing the attention of everyone present to the newcomer. A man in glasses enters, smiling and praising the presentation, revealing himself to be none other than the city's vice mayor. The politician enthusiastically greets the young man, stating that his plan has given wings to their once dead economy. During their conversation, the vice mayor casually mentions that the former president of the Chamber of Commerce recently retired. Recognizing the talent before him, he gets straight to the point and asks if the young man would be interested in taking on this important position, but the protagonist kindly thanks him and politely declines, saying he prefers to focus first on developing the gold mine. The politician accepts the answer with a smile and praises the young man's sense of responsibility in prioritizing real results. We start with a serious conversation about money, and a young man in a suit warns that the situation in the city is complicated. Filled with anger, the brown-haired character demands that the contracts be broken immediately to get his revenge. Soon after, the news reports that the main bank suddenly canceled its partnership with the powerful Jinfa group. At that moment, a new partner named Lin Yuan emerges, who is becoming very famous as a successful young entrepreneur. Because of this, the old group's stocks plummeted by 90%, and everyone began to panic. In the meeting room, the men in suits have long faces because the company is heading straight for disaster. Then, the boss starts yelling that in just 3 days, they lost over 12 partners who fled at the same time. He slams his fist on the table and puts all the blame on the boy wonder who started a gold mine project. Just then, another man comments that young master's son is very good at pushing the blame for his mistakes onto others. The boss becomes furious and asks what he means by that, glaring at his partner with immense hatred. The other man replies to his face that the company is only going through this embarrassment because of the master's blunders. But the company owner lets out a curse and stands up, asking if his partner has completely lost his mind. He continues to complain that his rival stole his girlfriend and that he didn't know who he was messing with now. At that instant, the villain tells the other man to shut up and calls the guards to forcibly remove the man from there. Enraged, the businessman vows to get revenge on Lin Yuan no matter what, so he won't be humiliated again. Later at the company building, Master's son gets a message and orders someone to go take care of a plantation. With a wicked look, he hands over a device to jam signals, and tells his henchmen to handle everything carefully. He also hands over an envelope with a fake report and tells the employee to take care of the people at the agency. During a night of heavy rain, we see a truck and several figures near a field using a long hose. A few days later, a crowd shows up at the mountain construction site, shouting for the protagonist to come out and give an explanation. A reporter appears in front of the cameras, warning that the Chishin group's construction is polluting the region's land. Soon after, she interviews an elderly woman who cries, saying their entire crop was lost and they have no way to eat. At that moment, an furious man shouts that the company has given no response and that they will take the case to the government. With that, the residents begin to demand justice and ask that the young entrepreneur Lin Yuan face severe punishment immediately. Meanwhile, at the Jinfa Company building, the villain gathers all the city's press to spread more lies to the public. He gets on stage and says he hates companies that don't think about ordinary people and only seek profit at any cost. Then, the audience starts to agree with Master Sun's words, saying this situation could even end in tragedy. Being very dramatic, the scoundrel asks everyone to save the city's people while pretending to be very concerned about the poor. Soon, the reporters assure him they won't let this supposed crime go unaddressed and will demand a solution soon. Just then, several newspapers start publishing headlines calling the hero a heartless mercenary who is destroying everything. With a wicked smile, the villain thinks that the protagonist will never survive so much pressure from all sides. On a giant screen in the middle of the street, the news reinforces that the pollution is severe and the people remain outraged. In front of the construction site, the crowd doesn't stop shouting for the hero to come out, angrily carrying protest signs. From the top of the building, the young man observes all the chaos below, but doesn't seem the least bit scared by the commotion. Worried, his friend suggests he wears security gear and escapes secretly in a car to avoid being mobbed by the crowd. But the protagonist smiles and says he did nothing wrong, so there's no reason for him to hide from anyone. At that instant, he reveals that he was already expecting this attack and has prepared very well in recent days for the counterattack. Then, the young man shows a flash drive and explained inside he has saved proof of bribery and official water test records. With great confidence, he explains that he has the backup of all the security cameras to prove who the real culprits are. Finally, the hero hands the device to his ally and orders him to take everything straight to the agency's director. At that moment, the young man's ally talks to an official in her office and explains that the recordings are very blurry, but he assures her that, if they can prove the testing agency was bribed, it will be clear that it's all a setup against the company. The next day, an important announcement on a cell phone states that the Chishin group will hold a press conference shortly. Meanwhile, the villain celebrates with his assistant, thinking he's finally going to get his hands on the city's gold mine. With a smile on his face, the scoundrel decides to go to the event to witness the moment of his rival's complete downfall up close. Then, the press conference begins with several reporters waiting anxiously to uncover the whole truth of the case. The hero gets on stage and starts showing the images recorded by the security cameras on giant screens for the audience. Just then, Master Sun gets confused when he sees that the recordings are full of interference and show almost nothing real. Very calmly, the young man explains that the cameras suffered an attack from foreign technology at the exact moment of the crime, but he reveals that specialists managed to restore everything in high definition and shows the culprit pouring the poison. The villain is shocked to realize his plan has failed and starts complaining that the tools he bought were useless. Then, the protagonist presents the results of new official tests done by the government, which prove the water's purity. The expert confirms that the previous report was completely false and that the testing agency received a lot of bribe money. With that, the people begin to realize that everything was fabricated to harm the hero and protect the real criminals. Realizing the situation has turned dire, Master Sun tries to sneak away before anyone notices his presence there. but he is immediately stopped by two police officers who ask the dishonest businessmen to accompany them to the station. Then, the hero makes a surprising announcement, saying that the gold mine now belongs to the state, and no one will profit from it alone. He guarantees that all commercial earnings will be used to help poor people and build public works in the city. Following the success of the press conference, the buildings in the region begin to light up with the news of the protagonist's brilliant victory. That day, the municipal government awards a Medal of Honor to the entrepreneur for his great contribution to all of society. However, in the middle of the ceremony, the young man starts to feel very ill and ends up fainting, while everyone tries to help him. Suddenly, the young man wakes up startled, not understanding anything that's happening around him. He then gets up in a large, old-fashioned hall and wonders just where he ended up. Looking at his clothes, the young man questions if he might have passed on and gone to some kind of afterlife court. Just then, a bright light starts to shine from the palm of his hand, leaving him even more confused. From the light, a golden entity emerges, and the protagonist recognizes it from a dream he had some time ago. The figure then congratulates Lin Yuan for passing all the tests and maximizing his abilities. With that, an intense power flows into the young man as the being announces that he will inherit the title of God of Wealth. A glowing mark forms on the hero's chest as all that power takes shape inside of him. When he opens his eyes, he is already the new god, and a man by his side congratulates him on his new position. The young man realizes that everything that happened in his dream was real, and now he is a deity. Soon after, a beautiful immortal appears, saying she was sent by the Queen Mother with fruits as a welcome gift. The new god feels awkward, and a servant whispers to him about the celestial court's etiquette for the moment. He then politely accepts the gift and decides that first, he needs to find out what his new duties are. Sitting on his new throne, he asks for a summary of the urgent tasks, as his memories haven't fully merged yet. An official reports that his duty is to maintain the balance of fortune in the three realms, which are in a severe financial crisis. The man explains that immortal coins come from the wishes of humans, but offerings have been greatly diminishing. The protagonist understands the situation and feels like he has just inherited a gigantic mess to solve. At that moment, it is announced that the Jade Emperor and the venerable Tathagata have just arrived. The young man is shocked by the arrival of such important and powerful figures right in front of him. The servants then respectfully greet the two deities who have just entered the hall. The Jade Emperor and Tathagata enter, and the new god thinks that he has barely taken office and is already receiving the top brass. He greets them with respect, and the emperor congratulates him on assuming his new and important position. Being very direct, the leader of the place asks for financial support for the upcoming Celestial Peach Banquet. The monk also takes the opportunity to request funds to repair the golden body of the Spirit Mountain. Seeing the situation, the hero asks them both to calm down and says he will review everything before making a final decision. With that, two golden projections with the requests appear floating in front of the new god of wealth. He analyzes the documents and notes that the banquet's budget has already been allocated, and the extra request is an exaggeration. The young man gets a sour look on his face when he realizes the deficit is caused by ridiculous wastefulness. He then turns to the two of them and says he will approve 1 million coins for each, and nothing more. The Jade Emperor becomes furious, feeling humiliated, but the monk is impressed by the young man's fairness. The young god explains that every coin comes from the wishes of the people and must be spent on important things. A servant then announces that Fairy Chang is requesting an audience, and he allows her to enter the hall. A stunning woman enters, introduces herself, and humbly requests an emergency fund for a problem. The protagonist blushes a little and asks what happened, thinking to himself that she is very beautiful in person. She explains that the roots of the laurel tree have been damaged, and this will cause disasters in the mortal world. Analyzing the request, he sees the urgency of the situation and immediately approves the funds for the repair. At this, the Jade Emperor gets upset and questions why her request was approved on the spot and his was not. The hero then explains that her request was to save lives, while theirs was just for superficial things. The emperor leaves in a huff, but the monk acknowledges the wisdom in the decision and also takes his leave. The fairy thanks him from the bottom of her heart and invites him to visit the Moon Palace for some wine once everything is resolved. The new god then says he wants to see the situation with his own eyes and asks if the fairy can take him there. Arriving at the Moon Palace, he is amazed by the beauty of the place, which is even more incredible than he had imagined. The hostess welcomes him, saying her home is simple and that she has prepared some wine and light dishes for him. She then serves moon cakes with honey and a special house wine for the guest to try. Just then, a very cute white rabbit appears with a gift for the King of Wealth, saying it's a freshly made sweet. The young man enjoys the scenery with good food and drink next to a beautiful lady, thinking how nice this moment is. Suddenly, he hears a strange noise and gets confused, trying to figure out where that sound was coming from. He then asks the fairy if there are any constructions nearby, but she replies that the noise must be from Wu Gang. Soon after, an axe is seen forcefully chopping a tree in a forest near the palace. The protagonist is completely shocked, unable to believe what was happening right in front of him. Just then, the rabbit transforms into a girl with bunny ears and warns the god of wealth to be careful. The jade rabbit then appears in front of the hero to protect him from any danger that might appear. With her magic pestle, she attacks a mysterious figure that was hidden, observing them from a distance. She apologizes for the scare, but the young man says that he's actually the one who should be thanking her for her help. Behind a tree, a man with an axe panics when he realizes he has been discovered spying. Terrified, the man kneels and begs for forgiveness, saying he had no ill intentions. The protagonist helps him up, and the man introduces himself as Wu Gang, the legendary tree cutter. The new god realizes this is the famous Wu Gang from the legends, but notices that he looks a bit different. The hero comments that the woodcutter's hand seems to be a bit shaky as he holds his axe. The man then explains that he spent 1,000 coins on the axe, but the quality is terrible due to inflation. The young man is surprised to learn that this kind of problem is also happening in the celestial realm. Wu Gang continues, saying that even Lord Lajin can't afford fire stones for his furnace. The fairy then scolds the man, telling him to stop talking nonsense, and he agrees right away. The god of wealth remembers that the phantom from his dream mentioned a financial calamity that was coming. He then asks the young woman to tell him more about it, and she agrees to take him somewhere to explain everything. The fairy reveals that the fortune of the three realms is unbalanced and accumulating in a specific place. The young man questions how there can be a catastrophe that the talented immortals can't solve. She explains that while they deal with demons, only one person can solve a financial crisis, and that person is him. The protagonist is in shock, not understanding why he is the only one who can solve this huge problem. The young woman takes him to a place called the Clear Mirror Hall to show him the origin of it all. With her powers, the fairy begins to manifest a bluish energy to activate a very powerful artifact. A large magic mirror appears in the middle of the hall, revealing its shiny and mysterious surface. She then introduces the underworld, reflecting mirror, a gift from the Jade Emperor that reveals hidden things. The image in the mirror shows a dark, deep cave with a greenish glow emanating from within. Inside the mysterious location, some strange beings work on a multi-story structure. The men carry boxes filled with an unknown red flower into that building. Demon-like creatures hurry the workers, saying the punishment will be severe if they are late. The hero asks who those people are, and the fairy replies that they are in the underworld, the realm of the departed. She suspects they are hoarding money and that the root of the financial calamity is right there. At that moment, a golden light shines in the protagonist's hand, and he wonders what's happening. The light in his hand shows a wealth flow index that is decreasing very rapidly. This makes the fairy worried, and she warns that the financial calamity is coming and he is in danger. The protagonist is very confused and lets out a cry of surprise, not understanding anything that's happening. He then looks at his glowing hand and repeats to himself that he is in great danger right now. The young woman explains that this is the wealth flow index, and it directly affects the security of the three realms. She also warns that if the index drops to 14%, the calamity will begin with no turning back. The fairy reveals that he will be the first to suffer, and the realms will face a backlash, with mortals falling into misery. The young man is terrified and can't believe his very soul will be shattered, and that everyone will suffer. His companion says that stressing out won't help, and that heaven has already seen several gods of wealth fall. In desperation, he yells that what he inherited wasn't a seal of power, but a terrible death sentence. The young woman also reveals that he is the 999th one, and he can no longer pass the title on. With a clenched fist, he realizes that he only has one path left to follow from now on. The fairy encourages him, saying that if he solves the crisis, he will become the most powerful of all beings. With a smile, he decides that since waiting or failing both lead to his end, the best option is to go all in. At that moment, a powerful golden energy completely envelops the body of the new god of wealth. The young woman smiles and says that the power of the realms has felt his determination and is giving him his artifacts. 3 items appear: a whip, a rui scepter, and coins to ward off evil, regulate, and stabilize fortune. The fairy then kneels and swears her loyalty, saying she will follow his orders and work to the bone. The young man smiles and invites her to go to the underworld to uncover the truth behind that ghost money, but he warns that they can't just go down there in the clothes they are currently wearing. In the blink of an eye, the two appear on the road to the underworld, wearing normal mortal clothes. The young woman finds the mortal clothes very interesting and looks at herself with great curiosity. The hero winks and says that to catch the culprits, they need to keep a low profile and not draw attention. They then spot the main gate and decide they need to grab a ghost to ask some questions. Hiding, he observes 2 guys carrying boxes, while one of them suggests they go for a drink. The protagonist appears and tells the 2 of them to stop immediately, leaving the carriers very confused. One of the demons tells him to get lost and threatens that if he gets in the way of their work, his soul will be scattered. With a sinister smile, the young man thinks that they are quite arrogant and that he'll need to teach them a lesson. He then snaps his fingers and launches golden coins toward the 2 underworld ghosts. The coins hit the 2 demons square in the forehead, and they scream in pain from the impact of the attack. Frozen in place, the god of wealth asks who ordered the transport of that ghost money there. One of them begs for mercy and reveals they were just following King Yama's orders. The pair is surprised by Yama's involvement and orders the 2 to take them to him immediately. They arrive at the Hall of Judgment, a place with a giant gate and glowing red eyes. The demons refuse to enter the hall, saying that King Yama is inside and they are very afraid. A huge guard stops them from passing, but the protagonist says he wants to see King Yama and asks to be announced. The guard laughs and says that if he wants to see the king, he first needs to fill out a request form, if he can even get one. With a smirk, the young man repeats the guard's words about needing some kind of request form. He then lands a punch on the guard, sending him flying, and says that this is his entry request. With a swollen face, the demon screams for help, saying that someone is trying to force their way into the hall. With that, several ghost guards appear and charge forward to attack the pair, without a second thought. But the hero smiles confidently, as this is the perfect time to test his new and incredible powers. Meanwhile, in the hall, King Yama is relaxing peacefully with a woman who is feeding him grapes. Suddenly, a messenger runs in, desperate to give an urgent report to his lord. He informs him that someone is fighting with the guards outside, and Yama gets angry at the intruder's audacity. The young man then enters the hall, and the messenger points at him, trembling with fear as he recognizes him. The king of the underworld senses the visitor's aura and realizes he is the newly appointed god of wealth. The hero gets straight to the point and asks if the ghosts transporting the money were following his orders. Very nervously, the king admits that they were, but says he can't easily explain what's behind it all. He then invites the god of wealth to accompany him to a place, so that he can understand the situation. The pair looks at each other suspiciously, but decides to follow the leader of the underworld to see what he wants to show them. As they walk, Yama thinks that he was so focused on the young man that he didn't even notice who was with him. Just then, he recognizes Fairy Chang and asks why she is concerning herself with the affairs of his realm. The young woman stares at him and tells him not to play dumb, as the calamity affects all the realms. Realizing she is right, the king agrees and asks the two of them to follow him to understand the problem. He guides them through a dark cave and says he will give them an overview so they can grasp the situation. The king shows them a chart and explains that the underworld is centered around the hall, where he oversees everything. He continues, saying that with the inflation, all departments of the underworld have fallen into total chaos. Yama confesses that he wants to control the situation, but can only seal the money, which is why he's asking for help. The group then arrives at a huge gate, and the host announces that this is the ghost vault. The gate slowly opens, revealing a dense smoke and a green light coming from inside the place. Inside, they see gigantic piles of money, and the pair is shocked by the absurd amount. The king holds a stack of bills and says that all this money is the underworld's biggest headache. He explains that in the world of the living, people have a custom of burning paper money for their ancestors. It turns out that mortals are burning infinite amounts of money, far beyond what's needed for circulation. Because of this, prices in the ghost market have skyrocketed, and resentment among the departed only grows. The hero finally understands that the flood of spirit money is the true root of the financial calamity. The king confirms this and says that if he releases it all, the market will collapse, which is why he just seals the bills. The young god thinks that he never imagined burning paper in the mortal world could cause all this chaos in the underworld. He then tells King Yama that he wants to take a look at the ghost market, and the king agrees to send them. The king leads them to the entrance and says that, for their safety, the ghost officials will keep an eye on them from a distance. The young man places a hand on Yama's shoulder and tells him to leave the rest to them, and the king wishes them success. The fairy warns that the place is filled with resentment and that he needs to be very careful in there. But the hero smiles and says he wants to see with his own eyes what happens to those who have done nothing wrong. As they enter, they come across several ghosts carrying heavy sacks as if they were slaves. He is surprised and comments that even as ghosts, those souls still have to work very hard. The hero then approaches one of the ghosts and asks if he can explain what's happening there in the market. The ghost explains that only by working to save money can they be reincarnated and escape that suffering. Suddenly, a noise catches the protagonist's attention, and he turns to see where the commotion is coming from. A noble-looking man pushes the other ghosts, telling them to get out of his way because he's in a hurry. The hero hears the word rebirth, and, along with his companion, decides to follow the man to investigate. At the door of the pawn shop, a demon guard attacks a weaker ghost and forbids him from entering. The bully then throws the poor guy to the ground, right in front of the pair who were arriving to see what was going on. With contempt, the red-haired guard complains about his bad luck because of all the commotion. The protagonist then glares at him and says that for a simple ghost official, he's pretty smug and arrogant. At this, the brute gets angry and asks where they came from and if they think they can meddle in his business. Calmly, the young man says the guard isn't on his level to speak with him and tells him to call the boss of the place. Furious, the demon unleashes his blue aura and threatens to break every bone in the hero's body for daring to challenge him.